Okay, we are now live. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm seeing all the attendees jump into the room, so I'm just going to give it a minute while we get everybody in. Welcome, everyone, to the Association of California Symphony Orchestras Ask an Expert webinar, Streaming Your Season, 3 case studies of California orchestras that made it happen. I am Sarah Weber. I'm the Executive Director of ACSO, and I'm just mindful that attendees are still entering the room, so I'm stalling for time to make sure we don't start without everyone. Just going to give it a minute more or so. All right. All right, I'm going to dive in. And welcome again. If you missed my first, you're at the ACSO Ask an Expert webinar. Hopefully you're all in the right place. Streaming Your Seasons, 3 case studies of California orchestras that made it happen. My name's Sarah Weber. I'm the Executive Director of ACSO. One of our favorite things to do at ACSO is to share the stories of our orchestra members and the incredible work that they do. And this past year was no exception. And in fact, we have seen nearly all of our orchestra members go to great lengths to continue to engage their musicians and keep presenting music. And even without concert halls to perform live in and under very difficult circumstances, our members have risen to the challenge, developed new technology skills, broadened your communication reach, gotten incredibly creative with programming, and double down on your missions to serve your communities. And we are so inspired and applaud you for these efforts. And we know that you have worked harder maybe this year than you ever have. We really want to recognize that. And all of that work and all of those efforts and everything that you're doing and have been doing over these past 10 or 11 months, really it was the inspiration behind this webinar today. We are featuring 3 of the many incredible orchestras in our membership who went all in to transform their seasons into streaming, digital, spectacular events. They all went about this differently. They made choices that were unique to their orchestras and their circumstances and their communities, but they've had overwhelmingly positive results so far. And we wanted to share their journeys with you and inspire you and inform your own efforts for the digital work that you're doing. So this is how we're going to proceed today over the next 90 minutes. We have an incredible facilitator, Jamei Haswell, who will be guiding the conversation. She is an ACSO board member, and she is a trustee and immediate past president at the Santa Rosa Symphony. She's spent a lot of hours listening and learning about the stories of these 3 orchestras, and she will lead the conversation with the executive and artistic leaders who are with us today from the Santa Rosa Symphony, the Santa Barbara Symphony, and the Fresno Philharmonic. There is a lot to share, as I'm sure you can imagine, and this is not enough time to even begin to do these stories justice. So we anticipate we won't have a lot of time for questions at the end. We'll certainly get as many responded to as we can. So do type your questions into the Q&A window at the bottom of the screen, not the chat bar, but the Q&A window. And that means we can collect them all in one place and we can answer as many as we can get through in the time that we have. And for those that we don't get to, we will download those, and ACSO will facilitate following up and trying to get you more information about your questions. We will be recording this webinar, and we will send you the link to it in a follow-up email so that you can review it again. And having said all that, we will now turn the time over to Jamei Haswell to introduce our webinar and our panelists and to begin the conversation. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. It's really great to be with you today. After last year and the experience we had, it's been kind of a rough go for all of us, finding a way to stay productive and keep going. And a lot of orchestras just doubled down and some went dark, And for a little while, some put on small orchestra, chamber type music. And there were some outdoor balcony events and what have you. But the long and short of it is, it wasn't enough. The people that are here on this webinar today really went all in, as Sarah said. And we have 3 CEOs and music directors from the Santa Rosa Symphony, the Santa Barbara Symphony, and the Fresno Philharmonic. All 3 went beyond the ordinary and created sophisticated, virtual, live streamed, in-home concert experiences for their community. They took giant leaps of faith to give back to their communities. They dug deep to find the resources and the talent to do what they needed to do. And they created repertoires that focused on healing and inspiring their community. And they persevered. To me, they exemplify vision, leadership, and courage. None of these orchestras are full-time orchestras. Rather, they're moderate in size, and they're per-service orchestras. So that means that in one case, one of the maestros actually is responsible for 2 organizations, not just one. And they're often referred to as freeway philharmonics. So they don't have necessarily the deep pockets to fall back on. Santa Rosa will be the first to speak today. They were the first to stream their concert, but only by a week in October. They'll be followed by Santa Barbara, and then they'll be followed by Fresno. They presented their first virtual program this month. Our webinar today is divided into 3 parts. Storytelling, which will be consistent of 30 minutes of time, key decisions and challenges, another 30 minutes, and a limited Q&A. I will do my best to keep everyone on time, and I have a stopwatch next to me here, but I really want them to share deeply. And if we have to go over a little bit, then I'll be quiet and the rest of us will take advantage of their time. So the first 30 minutes of storytelling is really reflecting on why each orchestra did what they did, and what were the early motivators, and when did they start planning. Each orchestra will have about 10 minutes. Second, there will be another 30 minutes of sharing on how they did what they did. And that's where they're going to get into some of the key decisions and challenges. And you'll hear how they championed streaming technology, developed and got approval for safety protocols, how they handled financial issues, the venue uncertainties, and staffing issues. Each orchestra had its fair share of hiccups and unexpected challenges. Here again, each orchestra will have about 10 minutes. Finally, there will be a Q&A, and for those questions that we don't get to, we will get back to you after the session is over. So please leave your comments in the chat section. So let's get started. But before we do, let me just offer that I interviewed every one of the people that you're talking to, and it was just a really wonderful experience for me to hear what they had to say on why they did what they do. And I really hope you enjoy their comments today. So moving forward, I asked the first team, which is Santa Rosa. Full disclosure, it's in my backyard. So Alan Silow, the CEO and President and CEO of the organization, and Francesco Lecce-Chong, the music director, will be offering comments. And I believe, Francesco, you're going to be going first. So.
Indeed. Well, thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Jamie, so much. And thanks everyone for joining us. Great to have a chance to be here and join together with my incredible colleagues who, you know, each of us, I think, can appreciate what the others have gone through all of this. Because while we might have had 3 very different approaches, I think we can all agree that the workload was very, perhaps different than normal, and probably much bigger than normal. So wonderful to gather together and be able to share our stories. For me, you know, everything pretty much was shut down by the beginning of March. And it was a quick pivot as far as just getting things online. I started running a weekly education series online. I was doing hosting watch parties on Facebook, finding recordings that people could come together, and starting to build, a little online community, which actually continues to this day, even with everything else we're doing now. And that, continued because we didn't really know what we were doing. It seems laughable now that some of us were postponing our concerts like 2 months at a time, thinking like, oh, June, we'll be able to come back. And obviously by April, it was pretty clear that wasn't going to happen. I think for me, that was probably the low point, and maybe for many other people, when it became apparent that this was going to be long. We weren't sure how long. And we simply didn't know enough to know what we could possibly do. We didn't even know if we could do a string quartet. I mean, there was literally nothing at that point. So the big breakthrough for me, other than just, continuing everything online, was the first orchestra, pretty much it seems like in the world, that got back was the Dusseldorf Symphony in Germany. And I was fortunate enough to just have a very good friend who plays viola in the orchestra. So through social media, one day this thing pops up saying, it was like early May, and like, first concert back. And I was like, no way, already? Like, what's happening? And sure enough, it was streamed for free on YouTube. You can actually still see it up on YouTube. It was 3 groups of 15 musicians. And, they did a strings, they did a winds, and they did a brass piece. And it was sort of in that moment that everything changed for me, because, at this point, the motivation to try to look ahead is, how do we quite literally save our orchestra? How do we support our musicians? How do we keep our staff together? Like, literally, how do we do these things? And that was, that's the kind of motivator sitting behind this. And so when I saw an orchestra performance like that, it definitely changed things for me, because I thought, okay, now we have a path forward. We have the PPP loan, thank God, that's going to get us through the end of this season. And we have about 5 months. This was May, so we have about 5 months to the start of our season in October. And so fortunately, my counterpart, Alan, is used to my grandiose ideas that I seem to march in on a daily basis with. And I think this was just in a line of those when I was like, hey, we got 5 months. I know that we have never done anything like this. None of us have any expertise in this. But if we start planning now, maybe we have a shot. Maybe we can get online, stream these concerts, put together whatever size orchestra we can, but actually make something happen. And I know Alan will especially go into a lot of the details of the planning that happened, but I will say that we needed every single day of those 5 months. There was never a lull, and there was never a moment where it seemed secure. And really, just to kind of to go into that a little bit, even the day of our first rehearsal that was supposed to be back in the hall, we had 2 days of cancellations. We actually had to move everything 48 hours later because of air quality problems, which normally wouldn't be a problem, but because that affected the HVAC system, which was of course affecting everything we were doing COVID-wise. So quite literally, Alan and I were on a Zoom first thing every morning and last thing every evening. We were with all the leadership from the musician side of things, the leadership from the venue, from the hall. And it was really, truly a team effort, and people going well beyond the bounds of everything, of contracts, of hours that you should be working, of expertise. Everybody just threw themselves at this, and we got that first concert done, which probably was the hardest one, the biggest hurdle to get through. And it continued throughout the week. And I think those 3 things to me are really what came together to help us. The amazing leadership we had on the musician side of things, the fact that we had a hall that was ready to work with us to try to make this happen. And I think ultimately you have to have that partnership at the top of the organization. And certainly Alan and I have been, our job descriptions have now become inseparable in many ways, because we just have to absolutely trust each other and be on the same page at any given moment. And in many ways, it's just been amazing to see now how we can grow and move forward, being able to bounce so many things off of each other. On a big picture side, when we're doing, looking at these streaming concerts we've put together, the idea for me was, listen, there's so many people in our community, in our area, that have never come to see the Santa Rosa Symphony. They may not even know we exist. And for the first time, there is going to be no barriers to those people getting to know our work, because we were going to stream these for free on YouTube. So the idea was new people, new audiences who have never heard of us before can be a part of our community. And then for all of the people who have been coming for years, this would be their first opportunity to see us up close, professionally filmed, all the different angles, getting to see our musicians introduce every single piece in the program, conversations between me and them, like a whole really intimate and personal look at the work that we do. And it's been actually wonderful to see how it's connected both groups of people, those that are brand new to us, asking all sorts of questions during the live stream, and those that know every single person on stage. And so with that, before I turn it over to Alan, I just wanted to finish up and just give you a little clip of how we finish each one of our programs. You can see the 32 musicians that is the max that we will ever have on stage during this time. And I think it represents kind of the sincerity and just the honesty of what we are doing. You know, it is awkward at times. We are just a group of musicians in an empty hall trying to make music. And I was always trying to think, how do we end this program in a way that just kind of acknowledges that fact? And so this little video is just the very end of the Beethoven's Rosa Symphony that we did in December. So I'll let that play and then turn it over to my amazing executive director, Alan Silow. Well, thank you all so much for joining us once again. What a pleasure it's been to be able to share all this beautiful music with you. On behalf of all of us at the Santa Rosa Symphony, we're wishing you healthy and happy holidays, and we can't wait to see you again in the new year.
Alan, before you get started, I just want you to know I'm going to give you 5 extra minutes.
Oh, okay. All right. Shall I tell you about my wife and my son then? I mean, you know, let them know.
You can talk
All right.
quickly. So you have 6.5 minutes.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. So hello, everybody. And again, thank you for the invitation, Sarah and Jamie. It's wonderful to be with my esteemed colleagues who we've probably gotten to know each other better than ever this year, since when you're all going through the same challenges, you tend to collaborate and communicate a lot more than normal. And that's definitely been the case this year. You know, back in March, as Francesco was saying, we first we canceled 11 concerts, you know, from March through August. And the mantra that I was always conveying to the board was, it's all about plan and adjust. You know, you have to plan and then be willing to throw it out because things were changing so quickly. So you just have to be prepared to adjust. And that was understood and valued by everyone as we went ahead. And, you know, at the outset, it seemed to be almost the death knell for what we do, because basically in the past, the fact that we could get together collectively was what we did best to inspire and heal, you know, whether it was, you know, the fall of the economic collapse in 08 and bringing people together, or the wildfires of 2017, bringing people together was so important to our community and listening to our music. And that was the last thing that we could do with the COVID pandemic. And so what we looked to is, what were we going to do? And from my perspective, there were 3 core aspects that we really had to keep in mind with whatever we were doing going forward. And one was back in 2002, when we had a financial challenge, we recognized as an organization that the core of what we do is our classical series. We also do a family concert series and a pop series and other special events. But the core is our classical series. And we have a commitment that we are going to do that no matter what, because that's the core of what we do for this community. So that was a key motivator in looking to find what we could do. The other 2 core components were our musicians. You know, we have 2 key stakeholders in a sense. And one, of course, is our musicians. And as we all know, when this hit in middle of March, overnight, this Freeway Philharmonic, they all became unemployed. I mean, it was just radical, painful economic destruction, loss for our musicians. And so Francesco and I both were committed to putting as many musicians as possible on that stage that would be allowed with COVID regulations and social distancing. So that was a key component. And thirdly, were our subscribers. Our subscribers make up 80% of our concert audience. And they had renewed their subscriptions. We had done it before COVID hit. And so we felt they deserved to be provided a quality product, even if it wasn't what they thought they were originally going to get. And so those are the three core components that drove us. And so it led to us creating what Jim Collins, a noted writer in the nonprofit sector, has called a BHAG, which means BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goals. And I've used that as a sort of a mentorship concept. We created that when we looked to create the Green Music Center, the beautiful concert hall that opened in 2012. That was a BHAG. How's a small community going to raise $140 million? And this was definitely a BHAG, particularly how do we create virtual orchestral performances that are even better in some respects than a live performance, that, as Francesco said, that reaches more people, that provides a close-up and a better feeling for who our musicians are, and that they see things that they could never see necessarily where they're sitting in the hall. And I knew it was a BHAG because by definition, a BHAG is something that most people say is not possible. And I tell you, a lot of people were saying this is not possible. Most orchestras in California were choosing to go dark, and the reasons were somewhat obvious. How are you going to get government approval? It's too expensive. There's so much culture online, no one's going to watch it. You're not going to be able to bring in your soloists who are the main attraction. And last but not least, you guys don't even know technically how to do this. And so from our point of view, that was just sort of the motivation in a strange way of saying, all right, okay, we know what they're saying and let's find a way to do it nevertheless. And that's the beauty of a BHAG. It can inspire people. As Francesco said, it can bring people together. And that's exactly what happened. It brought together the musicians, the staff, the board, the community in a really, really powerful way, in a very meaningful way. It also meant that the idea that there's 5 days to the work week, I should add, went right out the door. We were working pretty much every day, and I remembered after a few months, there was a whole new vocabulary that up until middle of March had never even been in my mind. All of a sudden there's Zoom and Slack and VPN networks. I didn't even use those terms before, but they became very, very important to allow us to operate. And one of the key things were yes, Jamie.
You have 1 minute.
1 minute. Okay, great. So nevertheless, I guess in the second half, we're going to talk about exactly how we were able to achieve that BHAG, which I believe we absolutely have done and continue to do. And it's even exceeded our expectations. It's been incredibly rewarding and inspiring for so many of us, and really happy to play a role in that. Thank you.
And you can define success then too, all right?
All right.
All right. All right, our second group is from Santa Barbara. Kathryn Martin, President and CEO, and Nir Kabaretti. Oops, my timer just stopped, excuse me. Anyway, so Nir, you're going to go first on this. So tell us your story.
Right, we would like to hear before to see the clip, right?
Yeah, yes.
Buzz, buzz, buzz with the buzzer. Pop, pop, pop with the wheels. Stop, stop, stop with my heart.
Wow, I have my own private live concert, but I do wish you all were here.
Well, here we have Don Foster, Principal Clarinet with the Santa Barbara Symphony. Welcome back.
Oh, it's great to be back. Really great to be back, and great to see you. Beethoven to make us a better musician?
I don't think we could live without Beethoven. So yes, we need Beethoven not only to be better musicians, but I think better people.
Thank you. That was wonderful.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Sarah, for having us. I apologize for the folks who couldn't hear the audio. I guess I'm one of them, but this is the end of what we've been working through since March. And I would like to maybe start with saying that when it started early March, I was at that time music director of 3 orchestras, one in Florida and one in Israel, next to the one in Santa Barbara. And so in a really within seconds, the entire world has changed. You know, first of all, going on the phone, canceling all the booking, flights, cars, hotel, things like that, but then immediately understand we have a huge responsibility here, and we have a moral commitment to community, to the musicians, and as my colleagues, Alan and Francesco mentioned, I guess we share a lot of the musicians. These are among the busiest people in California, and all of a sudden they lost so much, pretty much an entire income from so many different places. And so it was not a question of if we have to go dark or not. It was the question, how can we do things? How can we come back in any sort of normality that will allow us to support the community and the musicians? So, you know, pretty early we saw the Berlin Philharmonic offering their archivals recordings, the Metropolitan for free. And these are organizations that, you know, have a lot of material to share. But I guess, as my colleagues would know, as a small organization, we don't have this kind of data and recordings that we could share with our audience. So I said, okay, how can we find something? We do have audio archival recordings from our concerts, but we are only allowed to stream them once after performances on the local radio. So if we do it online, we have to compensate the musicians. So we started that. We realized that it's far too expensive for what we can afford. Luckily, the PPP just came, so we used part of that. We trim it to just 30 minutes of audio because it's not a video. And you know, when you put something online, you want the visuals. Our marketing team gave a lovely name. It's called Sundays with the Symphony, but it was mainly an audio with some images of the orchestra. You know, it was a very modest beginning, and we said, okay, what next? We had some heavy pre-existing conditions financially, and in the middle of that, 2 months into the pandemic, we had a switch in the leading role, and we were all blessed that Kathryn Martin joined the team. And the first thing we talked about was, okay, we have sort of established streaming, which goes once a month, but we are not quite happy with what it is. First of all, it's very expensive. Second, it's not really have a video component. So I suggested how we can go with something more personal. How can we share our story, talk to our musicians, but a little bit more creative way, so it's not just a Zoom meeting. And so with a very modest, almost no budget, we hired a local video expert who would go with me in town, at the beach, at our monumental, beautiful Mission, going to some of our donors' backyards, and then interact with musicians from our family. And that means members of the orchestra, guest artists, alumni of our wonderful education program. And they shared with us videos. Now, knowing that the concentration span of the normal classical music online navigator is about 3 to 5 minutes, we were limiting ourselves to short pieces, fun stories in between. And we got wonderful feedback and said, okay, what next? And so it was clear we want to come back with something. We know that people love the story. And so we said, let's try to put a season together. And I'm a pretty hopeless, optimistic, as my colleague Francesco said, yes, we thought, oh, in 2 months it will go away. No problem, let's start with something. So we envisioned 2 recording streamings for October and November, and then January and on of 21, going back to socially distanced in-person concerts. So now you have to choose repertoire, and of course dealing with all the technology things. But we are not by definition a pops orchestra. Actually, I very rarely conducted any pops concert in my life. But the first concert we did choose to do pops music because that's something that appealed to a larger audience. And we partner with our theater here, which turned out to be a beautiful joint fundraiser. So I thought, how can we bring a more accessible repertoire instead of a Beethoven symphony? So that was choosing the rep, and also the soloist, Broadway star Lisa Roman. I knew we don't want to deal with flights, we don't live with quarantine, hotels. She lives right here around the corner, and we know there are existing arrangements for the 25, 30 musicians on stage. So that went very well. But again, we are talking about a format that is new to us because we did not want to just stream a concert. I knew that doesn't work for me to come with the orchestra and do the normal ritual that we do in a concert setup, because people at home, again, there's 3 to 5 minutes that people kind of give it to normal free navigation. Here we are actually charging tickets, so people will stay longer probably, but still we want to keep them engaged. And the way to do that, and I agree totally with Francesco, is to tell them stories, introduce the pieces. And I knew that we need a host. And if we want a host, let's have a local celebrity. And we reached out to Leslie Zemeckis. She was very graciously, agreeing and did whatever we asked her. And it was really a beautiful combination of theater, music, and of course the experience at home. And that's led us to our next concert. Said, okay, we wanted to open with a big Beethoven gala, 250th anniversary, but we cannot deliver. We wanted to do Fidelio, Beethoven's only operas, the second act, but that's clearly impossible with a chorus, big chorus on stage. So we said, how can we change that and actually deliver a chamber music evening with our musicians, highlighting them, talking to them? What would be better than try to partner with our colleagues from the Music Academy of the West? And the experience that we wanted to give is the different halls of the Music Academy. We had the interviews in the gardens and all kinds of to give an experience at home. And we have a sort of an agreement between Kathryn. She is responsible to bring the people to log in, to subscribe, to pay. And my responsibility is to keep them engaged during the recording so they don't leave, which, it's once they're in the theater, they normally stay. But when you read the data and you see that most people leave after 3 and 5 minutes, it's kind of, what do we do to keep them? And I think we can be very happy to see that the number stayed consistently high, and if not actually pushed up. So I think this was the attempt to switch from totally an organization that technology-wise was not very advanced. And I can say for myself, I could hardly take a selfie before, and let alone putting a camera, things like that. So I think we went a long way from March till now, and I can only hope that we will keep that also in the future. And with that, I would like to to Kathryn.
And with that, I want to share that I added 5 minutes to everyone's, to the 10 minutes. So you each have 15, the total of 15 minutes. And Kathryn, you have 6 minutes and 31 seconds.
Okay. It's so funny listening to you talk, Nir, because I had forgotten already. I'd forgotten that, yes, our original plan was to be back in the hall January with a socially distanced audience. In fact, I also remember that moment, there was a moment in, was it late July, where we saw the socially distanced audience chamber seating chart with pods that the Granada Theater had done. And, for all of us in the industry, I'd never seen anything like that. It was like the same moment when I took my earned income revenue budget from $900,000 to $160,000 as I typed those numbers in. So as Nir said, I was brought in May 1st to address what Nir and I call the symphony's pre-existing conditions, and we smile when we say that, but they were and are significant. In addition to finding a path forward during a pandemic. So as you can tell, I'm a little bit crazy for wanting to come in, but there's good reason why I said yes to doing this. So again, going dark was not an option. I think for all of the orchestras on this call seems to be a starting place. And I know it's also not to be taken for granted that it was not an option both for financial reasons. We had also collected those subscription renewals, but also morally it was clear that Nir, myself, and our board chair all shared this sense of responsibility to continue to deliver on our promises to those in our care. So, we refer to our symphony family, where our family needed us, our subscribers needed us, our musicians, our students, our community. And we found out that unlike many communities around the country, our venue also felt that same sense of responsibility and the willingness to try, which comes with then the willingness to accept failure, I guess, but that we were all working together with the intention to help others. Also, our orchestra committee and our local musicians union also shared that sense of curiosity and responsibility. So like everybody here, we ran the scenarios, we ran different scenarios. I've never done so much budgeting and scenario planning that ended up not actually resulting in anything. And we didn't go dark. So all of our music education programs immediately and continue to be virtual. None were canceled, all were reimagined. As Nir said, we continue to offer and deliver on our promise for a 7-series subscription series, now broadcast. We priced it, talk about big decisions, at a very bold $300 for the season. That satisfied through Nir's programming, that satisfied our renewing subscribers. And we also continue to sell these series subscriptions online after the broadcast has occurred, because that's now possible. We sold a 7-series subscriptions package today for concerts that happened in the past. We raised more in contributions this year than the symphony had done at the same time last year before COVID. 25% of the year-end appeal donations this year came from first-time donors. And I know that the other two organizations have been experiencing this kind of response that I certainly know in May, I was not able to predict. And I also want to mention that while on some days, Nir and I might like to think, and our staff likes to think, that it's our amazing, skills, our budgeting, our fundraising, our marketing expertise that has helped us achieve this success. I think that truthfully, in hindsight, our success is coming from our igniting hope and generating our own momentum. It's come from the kindness of those we work with and a shared willingness to try to be this force for good, as Alan was saying, when our community needs us most. And even when we don't know for sure if we'll be successful. It's really been tough. So Nir, Janet, our board president, and I, we were like-minded. And we found others, but it's hard for the board, any board, to approve a budget based on best guesses and hope. I certainly have never had to present a budget where I said, I don't know if it's going to work. I've never done this before. I've never been in this situation. And I think it's very hard for a staff to, of course, plan and then have that plan that you work so long and hard on all hours of the night within a week no longer be viable because the world has changed. And so I just wanted to leave this section with just a thought that leadership, I think, is in our industry and maybe beyond, is really being redefined in COVID. So it's not about knowing all of the answers, but I think it's about being in the present moment, which is all we can ever do, with a little humility, lots of vulnerability, and again, with the intention to impact those around us and to share the possibility that we see. And I think too, one of the things that I noticed is that during COVID, we at Santa Barbara Symphony, and I think others, are having this opportunity to realize what our true purpose is. And Alan and Francesco mentioned this, in my opinion, to bring joy, connection, and engagement to our communities in ways that only we can do. And it turns out that performing classical music programs in front of live audiences in a concert hall is just one of the many ways that we can do that. So what a silver lining to now know that for sure.
Thank you, Kathryn. Appreciate it. Now to our newly crowned streamers, the Fresno Philharmonic. Ray, I think you're going to go first, and we're going to do the clip first, correct?
Do the clip
no,
first.
No, Steve's going first, and you can do the clip first. So
right,
set it up. And I gave you 15 minutes as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, welcome everyone again, and it's such a great pleasure to be here. We want to thank Jamie and Sarah for inviting us to be part of this conversation and doing such a great job preparing it. And also, it's such a pleasure and an honor to be here with such wonderful colleagues. I think something that is absolutely important to call out is that ACSO has been a major support to the planning process that all of us have been going through. I know our weekly CEO meetings on Friday have been just integral to our ability to move forward. That we've learned so much from Alan and Kathryn and so many other colleagues here in California, and the job that I think ACSO has done to keep everybody connected. So that we had the opportunities to learn, talk frankly with each other, and really allowed each of us to find our own pathway forward has just been instrumental. So definitely want to thank Sarah for her incredible leadership of this organization. It's interesting, hearing everybody talking, which automatically threw me back to March when the COVID crisis hit. We had just finished dress rehearsal for a chamber music presentation, and as my phone was blowing up as Ray was leading the orchestra through what was going to be a world premiere here in Fresno. And I, after the rehearsal, huddled with Ray to say, this is not going to happen tomorrow. we're as I'm seeing so many emails coming in from so many orchestras saying we're canceling. It was just just an amazing 24 hours that totally changed the whole orchestra landscape. Again, like our two colleagues here and so many other orchestras, initially we, first and foremost just had to get music out to our community any way we could. Ray and our musicians, responded, very quickly and very creatively, with, producing videos in their homes with their phones, doing, whatever we could to just stay visible as quickly as possible, and obviously with no money to do so. And that was just, that was something that obviously, all of us were engaged in those early weeks and months of the pandemic. Interestingly, and I think this does form, a difference in our situation compared to Santa Rosa and Santa Barbara. At the time the COVID pandemic hit, we had not yet announced the next season. We had not announced the 2021 season. We were probably 2 or 3 weeks away from that announcement. We had the season planned, but had not made it public yet. We spent quite a few months into the summer, into late July, early August, hanging on to the idea that we might have some kind of truncated live season in the spring of 2021. And so that was the initial thrust of our planning efforts, after PPP loans, after getting in place a side letter with our musicians, all the things that everyone was going through. But certainly by August, it was just abundantly clear that we were not going to be back in our venue with a live audience for this season. And so that was the stage when we sort of fully rebooted to the idea of digital presentation. By that time, we certainly saw and took a tremendous amount of comfort and encouragement from the fact that the final quarter of our fiscal year fundraising, March through June, our donors really stayed with us. That our FY20 final quarter numbers were virtually identical to FY19. So that we saw no cutback in donations. Over the summer, our largest foundation sponsor renewed and sent us the check, for $100,000. So we were, as both Kathryn and Alan said, it was just clear staying dark was not going to be an option under those circumstances, that we had to keep faith with our supporters. Obviously the devastating effect on our musicians was foremost in our mind. We just, we really felt, under pressure to find employment opportunities, any way we could. So all of these things were sort of key motivations for us to find some pathway forward. Also, what we observed of the effect of coronavirus on our community. Fresno, has been hit quite hard by the virus. We're in the Central Valley. The farming industry and the food processing industries have been real hotspots for this virus. Fresno also has significant and unique economic challenges with disparities and racial equity. So we felt we just had to continue executing on our mission, and to continue bringing support and encouragement to our community looking forward. So those were all those were the things driving us. And I think, so as we turn the corner into the idea of digital presentation, we kind of looked at it, we looked at our situation and said, well, we had initially thought we would have some kind of short subscription series that we were going to call it our Masterwork series, as we normally do. And so we kind of landed on the idea of saying, well, let's do a digital Masterwork series. So let's have that define artistically what we're going to try to accomplish with this project, and that decision, was going to set some markers for us about quality, about what we were trying to do, that to try to see if we could present in the digital space at the same quality level that we demand of ourselves when presenting live concerts to our subscription series audience. And so again, looking at budget and so forth, we sketched out a plan for a 4-video digital Masterwork series, and that sort of then gave us the framework to move forward on, as we then worked through, as I'm sure we'll get into later, the integrated media agreement, developing COVID procedures, starting discussions with the county health department, all of those things. But I think that was sort of the key initial big decision to say what were we trying to create in whole, and then how we then went into production, and things happened. Reality, happened as we entered into it. But I think with that, I'll turn it over to my incredible colleague Rei Hotoda to sort of talk then about how the artistic plan developed. As everyone has said on so far, the executive leadership, artistic leadership partnership has been absolutely crucial. I've been just amazed what Rei, and as well as Francesco and Nir, like the way the job description of a music director has changed since March. That they've become journalists, they've become TV presenters, interviewers, film editors. It's just been extraordinary, and it's been an amazing journey working with Rei through this. So with that, I turn it over to Rei.
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you, ACSO, for having me as part of this incredible group of people and leaders in the arts in California. I have to say the one thing that really strikes me in all of our conversations is the need to give back to our communities, to our orchestra community, to our patrons. And this is the one thing that really drove me during this time, and last year especially, was what are we going to do to be in front of our audiences, in front of our community that really needs us during this difficult time. And whatever it took, every day, Stephen and I would be talking about ideas, and those ideas would fall through. I mean, I'm sure we've all gone through this, and I don't want to do this again, is to come up with a great idea. It might be a grand idea, and then it have fall through constantly. But I think the one thing that really helped all of us is to have perseverance. And more than any time ever, I think arts leaders and organizations need this perseverance, not to give up, because it would have been so easy for me to say, okay, well, because of our venue, because of the union, because of financial issues, we're not going to be able to do it, and to easily say, okay, we'll just go dark. But I think it was because of this dual, leadership, this power team. And for us, it was not just Stephen and I, it was our musicians too. Meeting with the leadership of our union rep and our unions, that we were able to really have kind of a collaborative work ethic, driving us forward to say, look, this is the goal. How do we get there? And I think more than ever, this collaborative effort is so important. And I think it's super key to success, because, one group can give up, but then it was like Stephen saying, no, I think we can do this, or myself saying, I really think we need to program this because this reflects our community in a certain way. So grit is something that really helped us push forward to where we are today and giving back to our community. But more than ever, I think this is an opportunity. It was an opportunity for us to be as creative as possible too. So we're not limited to, just presenting concerts. We're like, everyone is trying all this digital, concerts for free or for charge, and to be really creative in this process to what works in your community, and what works in our community would be different for the other orchestras. So I think, really assessing what works for our community was really important to say, for us, Stephen and I were like, Fresno was really hard hit by the pandemic. What can we give back to our community that would say, hey, this is a healing process for all of us. Let us share our music with you. And we felt more than ever that it was really important to have these concerts for free for our audiences and beyond. But then in that way, we were again thinking of our community and how can we showcase our community today in these digital masterworks. And so that's why one of the ideas that came forward was, and this was also a collaborative effort with our videographer that we hired, Tal Sklut, was that how do we highlight Fresno? And it was, really showcasing the city of Fresno and the people of Fresno. in our video captures, in our concerts. And so we're embedding the community in our virtual masterworks. So this was a creative process that we, again, this collaborative effort that really helps bring forth even better ideas than what I would have come up with my own, or Stephen on his own, or just with, we also talked to our players and said, what kind of repertoire do you want to be playing during this time, given the limitations of our stage and social distancing? And so again, it was just working together and feeling our way through, and with so many pitfalls. I can't tell you, it was like every other day, that's not going to work. Okay, how do we pivot to the next thing? So anyway, that's what I wanted to share.
Thank you. I gave everyone a little extra time to lay the framework for the next part of the discussion, and we're going to have to move along very quickly because we only have a half hour left, and I want to make sure that if we can get at least 1 or 2 questions in. But this is the meat of what we're offering today. It's how you did what you did. And so I'd like for each of you to think back, each one of you, on 3 or 4 issues, very quick bullet-like issues that were key operational issues that you had to overcome and what you did. And if you can do that in less than, say, 7 minutes, let's try it. If not, we'll keep gabbing, but I'll interrupt. But anyway, let's try it. So Alan and Francesco, you go. What are the key issues?
I am going to give my time over to Alan. The two of us have worked so closely together, but it's no secret that he's the organized one between the two of us. And I remain ever grateful that the creative work and the future that I am looking towards is because of the framework that Alan continues to lay down. So over to you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Francesco. Yeah, I mean, 2 things that have always, I think, influenced me is, as a good manager, how do you do things right? But as a leader, you also have to remember to do the right thing. And I knew, Francesco and I both knew we were doing the right thing. And that really infused us in trying to figure out what does it mean to do things right. And what was startling to begin with is, how often we have to move outside of our box of thinking. I realized early on, we could not do this if I communicated to all the governmental authorities that what we are doing is concerts. As soon as you say the word concert back in July, forget it. You are dead on arrival. So with the help of what was going on in Hollywood and LA, I came upon the realization that we're not wanting to do a concert. We want to do a recording session. Well, lo and behold, that opened up an enormous amount of doors, because at the state level, it's amazing how much I had to Google this, but I actually found a paragraph in the state COVID guidelines that allowed recording sessions to proceed as long as you had safety and health protocols that had been approved by the county. So that gave me the guidance of how to move forward. And from there, I had to find out if I had to put together a protocol. And I'll shout out to LACO, Los Angeles Chamber Orchestra. They had a template of a health and safety protocol that I then used, worked with our local union, worked with other professionals here to really make sure it fit to our category. So then I had to go to the county public health, which was interesting because there's no local performing arts lobbying group here. And fortunately, I found the name of someone who works in that office who was a symphony subscriber. Oh my God, it's all about relationships, isn't it? So I spoke to her, she said, oh, we're gonna do whatever we can. Send me your health and safety protocol. So I sent it to her, she sent it to the public health officer, and lo and behold, the day I got an email saying it's been approved, I was like ecstatic. Then from there, I realized, oh, by the way, we have to get the venue approval. And guess what? That turned out to be the most challenging of all, because our venue, Sonoma State University's Green Music Center, is part of a huge bureaucracy called the California State University system that had largely closed down. And we were not a university user, obviously, even though we were the resident orchestra. But it was crucial to both Francesco and I that we needed to do this in that beautiful hall. The acoustics of that hall, the visuals of that hall would really infuse the value of our production. So fortunately, we had a really good relationship with the executive director of Green Music Center. It took longer than we might have hoped for, but eventually we got that approval, which was extraordinary. So then from there, we got the green light to go ahead. And then we had to make some really key decisions. And one was, we wanted to make this easy to access online when so many people told us you have older patrons, which is true. They're not used to being online. So with Francesco's experience, we all said, okay, we're doing this on YouTube. It can't be any easier than everybody's familiar with YouTube. Secondly, then we decided, should we charge or not? And in our case, the goal was we want to reach as many people as possible beyond our borders. So we decided to make it free. The sidelight to that was, but our subscribers have already, quote, paid for this. So we came up with, what are the benefits? It can't be a fixed seat because there is no seat. We came up with access benefits. And so that required me to go back to the guest artists that I had already booked, and they realized they would have no work. Instead, I offered them, if you could do a recital in your place, in your own city, we renegotiated, we'll be able to provide you with the fee compensation. And with Francesco interviewing that guest artist, we put together a separate recital video and made that only available to our subscribers, and also only made it available to subscribers to have a 30-day access. So those access benefits really won them over. And I'm really pleased to say that our refunds have been like about 8% on our subscriptions. The other golden opportunity was we actually found sponsors, new donors who were so excited that we were going online. We raised $150,000 on top of retaining our sponsors who had already committed to the season. So we actually did better. And then it all relied on raising money for each virtual concert. And I'm just so pleased to say, and these are some of the success indicators, Jamie, you asked earlier, and I'm speaking pretty quickly for 7 minutes.
Thank you.
We raised $20,000 on average for every concert in an hour and a half. And by the way, we did, I mean, I know people don't view it that long. People stayed with us for our hour and a half concerts. And then last but not least, one of the key things was what I call e-guerrilla marketing. That meant it required the staff, all of Francesco's friends, which are a lot of them around the country, the board, we gave them the text, the script, and they sent it out through their social networks, through their email list, that really brought in people from 22 states and 4 countries in the end were watching our concerts. So we were just ecstatic with how it's played out, and also thankful for the staff, who, by the way, totally dropped their job descriptions. I mean, we have our grant writer who's now our video editor, and so on and so forth. So everyone has come together to make that work. How's that, Jamie, time-wise? Am I good?
That was perfect. You set a great example, so the rest of you can follow that, right? Kathryn, you or Nir, jump in there.
Well, I can start with the artistic part, you know, how we did it. As my colleagues
7 minutes.
Yeah, as my colleagues indicated, we wanted to give a different experience. It's not just streaming something that you go to see in the hall. And, you know, when we recruited a Hollywood star to be our host, by the way, season subscriber of the symphony, we had a very first meeting, and I was delighted to have my entire team and my right-hand director of artistic operations, Susan Anderson, an expert. And we both looked at each other on the Zoom and we realized we are a bit short because the 2 ladies, the divas, I like to call them because they're just so wonderful, have different expectations from a video point of view. And so we decided we need to go with an extra crew of video experts. So one video crew is actually taking care of the orchestra, the musicians, whatever you see on stage. And then there is another crew that takes the interviews, the beautiful interaction Kathryn had with the musicians in the intermission, some fun things, and Kathryn can talk about that, catering that was brought to your home, dinner, etc. So it was clear that the format of camera just taking the concert as is would not work. And it created all kinds of things that put us totally away from our comfort zone, you know. It was very clear that we need a script. And I said in one of our staff meetings, hey, we need to create a script. And everybody said, yes, great idea. We will have a Google Doc and write whatever you want. I said, well, I'm actually kind of, I think I know how to do a Beethoven symphony. I'm not so great in script. So we realized we needed a team effort. And it was so beautiful to see, again, everybody in the entire team kind of putting their ideas and help to shape a nice script. And so I think the most important thing was the collaboration between so many people. And I couldn't agree more with Alan. The job description we could all throw away. We're doing everything we can for something that we totally not known before. So it's an incredible journey, and maybe Kathryn can add to the financial aspect of all these crazy ideas.
Yeah, it's just so funny that, you know, we're sharing these case studies, but we're not done. Like we are really literally continuing to fly the plane while we build it, you know. But we are in Santa Barbara. We're far enough along to feel like we've learned some lessons, enough lessons to already, you know, Nir and I have mapped out a 5-year framework that's going to be absolutely informed by what we've been learning about our audiences and our community. This season, we are on track with our budget, which is fantastic news. And it also means that we still have a lot to raise. You know, we're not done yet. So we continue to make decisions and give myself permission to have that combination of analysis and intuition and asking for help. So we had to figure out, like our colleagues, how to employ our musicians. That was a challenge that we wanted to overcome. We were able to, with PPP help, pay our musicians a portion of their earnings for the canceled concerts. And then Nir's programming for the full season made it possible, and the expertise of Susan Anderson and in collaboration with the musicians, the programming made it possible for us to guarantee offers of employment at a percentage, for the whole year. And that enabled us to do the broadcasting that we're doing. We had to figure out, as Nir was saying, how to get the orchestra back. I called Alan. That was my first step, and certainly being on the ACSO CEO calls, because we too, when we figured out that we just were not going to use the word performance, that wasn't what we're going to do, what we needed to do. We're doing recording sessions. That changed everything. That also then we were able to create our own protocols in collaboration with our venue, getting in detail with their HVAC systems, et cetera, and also with the orchestra. Many of our members of our symphony are also playing in Hollywood under those same recording protocols. So we had a lot of wisdom and guidance there. We also decided not to ask permission of our county health department, but instead take the leadership role and create what we felt was would be a safe for those in our care. And it was in great detail, and the county said yes. Long story short, right, we nail biting, wondering when, as we were creating these plans. We also wanted to figure out how to create real experiences, coming off of what Nir's vision was for these performances coming into the home living room. And so we had to choose the right platform. For our case, we decided to put it behind a paywall on our own website and have it hosted by one of our team members. That has worked out really well for us. Oh, okay.
I have a question for you.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
The support you got from the chamber, don't forget to add that into your conversation.
I don't know what are you referring to? The chamber?
The chamber support you got for the musicians. Never mind. Don't. Okay. If you don't know, then I don't know either. So I got it wrong.
So this paywall, on our website, but behind, we chose also to include a live chat feature, like many of you are doing. We had a pre-show originally meant for all of our patrons that aren't used to this format to have time to make sure they were in the right place for streaming. That has now turned into backstage interviews. We're partnering with a caterer. He does a symphony signature cocktail. People can order their dinners from this local restaurant. So you're supporting the local restaurant as well. I just got the time. So let me see. I think maybe in times of change and transition, I used to be a professional interim. It's time when intuitively you don't want to communicate, because you don't know all of the answers, and you want to wait until we know. But we use that discipline from really day one to just share what we do know, share what our challenges are. Our board started meeting every 2 weeks, 2 times a month. Just this month in February, we'll be stopping that. which is a big milestone. So just increasing communication and choosing what what an opportunity. Again, we couldn't talk always about the concerts because we weren't programming at the same rate. And so we found within us, well, what do we want to communicate? What are the stories that we wanted to tell? And sometimes we invited staff to say what it felt like to open up the mail and to get a handwritten note from a member of our community with a $5 bill thanking us for what we're doing. So lots more to say. I tried to speak fast.
You are great. You really are. You guys are doing great. All right, Steve and Ray.
Do you want,
tag team?
I'll take 3.5 minutes. Then you can close. Okay. So a couple of things. So since we kind of like were able to determine our time frame ourselves, because we weren't trying to replace fall concerts that we had already announced, and so the way we structured the project was, as I had said before, we were going to do 4 video releases. And so after Ray came up with the programming, then we pulled it all apart and decided to record. We recorded, our plan was to record out of order and record by instrumentation for efficiency, obviously stage space, all these things, so that we had several brass pieces. So those were all recorded in one session. We had several pieces that were strings only. Those were recorded, and then we would edit them all together. And we laid that out in a plan to do 4 recording sessions across 2 weeks in December, and then we would have the whole series in the can, and then our releases would be January through April monthly. It was and we got through our first week of recording and thought, gosh, how brilliant were we to do this great plan? And then immediately at the end of our first week, a regional stay-at-home order came into place, and we lost our second week of recording. And so that was one of our biggest hurdles. We fortunately had already recorded everything we had planned for the January release, and about half of what we had planned for our February release. And so, we postponed our second week of recording. It's just this week, the stay-at-home order has been lifted, so we've rescheduled it. But Ray very creatively looked at what we had in the can, and so we've reprogrammed our February release to use material that we have already captured, and then we can hopefully, if nothing else happens, move forward with the rest of the series. The other thing, speaking about sort of curveballs on the COVID front, with the conversations with our county health department, sort of like their last request of us, or demand for approval, was they did not like the fact that our wind and brass players were both unmasked and not using bells or anything like that. Bell covers, yeah, using bell covers. And so they required, if we were going to proceed in that way, that they mandated that we do COVID testing of all wind and brass players within 48 hours before they're reported for work. And that meant PCR tests, which don't always report results within 48 hours. And so that really threw us, but fortunately we have several doctors on our board, one who was on the staff of Valley Children's Healthcare, and immediately got us the appointments with people there, and they worked out a testing protocol which they were able to implement for us to, and I should say, the reason why this was such a logistical challenge is 60% of our musicians come from outside the Fresno area. And so the idea of like getting them here early enough to get tested and get results before the first service, Ray can maybe say what our first rehearsal was like because of that.
Right, so it was our first capture was brass only. And 2 of our brass players, they lost the tests. And so we couldn't do the brass rehearsal indoors. So we decided to do the first brass rehearsal outside. So we just had to make adjustments. But one of the things that I really want to mention is the repertoire choices that we made were really important to me and to our organization, that we really do something about equity in composers and, featuring Black composers, African-American composers, women composers. And so on every program, we decided that it was important to include that in our, kind of artistic vision throughout this digital series. But the other thing I wanted to mention, what Nir was saying about, scripts and whatnot, and doing something completely different and uncomfortable. I've never had to walk and talk and do a script at the same time. This is something the cameraman said, well, why don't you just sit at the piano and then start walking across the stage? And I thought, I can't do that, but you learned, and it was a good experience. And so, just wanted to share that with everyone.
Thank you. That was a great round robin we had there. Do any of you have any final comments or any extra things that you want to say? We have literally a couple of minutes before we open it up, give it back to Sarah for Q&A. Francesco, do you want to say anything about repertoire? Nir?
I will. I'll only jump in because I'm so excited what we're doing now, January through May. With the framework that we had in place, the fact that we're reaching more people on a per concert basis than we would if we sold out our hall 3 times in a row, which is kind of the most we could ever hope for. Mm-hmm. So because of that, we have 6 major commissions in the works over the next couple seasons. And our focus has been on not just presenting new music, but connecting people with the composers through multiple residencies. And so I went for a Hail Mary, and I just contacted a composer I've been wanting to work with, Alan Silow. And literally just out of the blue, we got in touch with each other, had a great conversation, and we're actually featuring her 5 times on every single program with 5 different pieces that she's done. But we've also made her my artistic partner so that she actually helps me shape the narrative of the entire program for each one of these concerts. And she's doing pre-concert talks with me, introducing her piece before we perform it. And in many ways, we are getting to connect with her more than we could in a normal concert season. And I love this idea that I've been given a chance to do things that we actually could not do otherwise. She certainly wouldn't have the time for this. And we probably wouldn't pack, 5 concerts with just one composer. So it's been a really wonderful to see being able to do some really cool things in that way, but also present new music again in a way that so many people can connect with and really have fun with. So it's been great to take that opportunity.
Does anyone else have a last comment before I turn it over to Sarah? Well, if not, I want to thank you. I'm so sorry that I was short on the time and what have you, but Sarah, I'm going to turn it back over to you and let's see what the questions are. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you so much. I could listen for a lot longer.
Me too.
This was wonderful, and it's fun that we are asking you guys to dissect and analyze your work while Kathryn said you're still in the middle of it. So let's just again in like 6 months and see what you have to say then. I think that would be great. I do want to say one thing before we do have some great questions. One, I apologize. We heard there were some people who could hear the clips and some people who couldn't. So we're going to send the links to all of those in the follow-up email so you can watch them and just get a taste of what all of our panelists described, and you can see their staging a bit and the elements they talked about. So I'm just going to dive in the order, and we'll get as far as we can until we hit 2:30. So our first question was the platform that you chose to present on. Fresno and Santa Rosa, you both used YouTube, and Kathryn, correct me if I'm wrong, and Kathryn, you put it on your own website behind a paywall. I think you all kind of talked about why and what, but how do you feel about the platforms you used to stream on? And we'll go Alan, Kathryn, and Stephen really quick.
Well, I think we're extremely happy with YouTube. First of all, the metrics are great in terms of analyzing where people are coming from, how many people are viewing it. So that's been instrumental. And also Francesco's familiarity with it has been really, really valuable, making the most of YouTube in terms of doing both pre-concert and post Q&A live on YouTube, and then showing the recorded performance itself on YouTube. So, and it's been very easy. And most of all, people can just, click on their smart TV, touch YouTube, and boom, come to our Santa Rosa Symphony channel on YouTube. Plus, it has been incredible at how many more people have subscribed now to our YouTube channel. because of that. So they're getting constant information and will for the long term. So it's turned out to be a very wonderful marketing tool, long term as well as short term.
Kathryn and then Stephen.
You know, it's working really well for us. We're getting analytics through our website, and you know, because we made, so our efforts have to really be on the marketing side for people to purchase tickets, because it's not sitting on YouTube. There has to, you know, there's a step to it, and there's some logistics, you know, so that we're sending out their individualized link the week before, then we're sending reminder emails. So, you know, there's some process to it. But what we found for us, you know, we also created this new website during a pandemic, which I don't recommend to anybody. But keeping it all on our website allows us, we have a broadcast page then, and we can invite people to donate by clicking here, purchase another ticket. So it's all here, bios to our musicians, it's all within our website. So we found that for us very helpful.
Yeah, I would say we've been very happy with YouTube. We've just had our one release so far, but like as Alan said, the metrics are really interesting and helpful. I mean, we were surprised that most people watched our first video on smart TV, so we were able to find that out. And so I think probably the ease of YouTube in terms of making that connection was there. I think we've been. It's like it's worked well, and we also did. I think as both Alan and Kathryn have done that also you can get to the programs through our website or directly through YouTube, and we've seen the same significant bump in YouTube subscriptions, and we're also building out libraries of other things like composer interviews and things that are also on our YouTube channel. So that's been great.
You know, I also wanted to say that now here we are in January, and it feels like a long time ago, but you know, we really, our subscribers and community really had a big learning curve to know, you know, what a smart TV was and how to get from here to there. And we deployed our staff and some of our musicians to be on the tech helpline. And it was wonderful then when we went to the next performance to see the increased confidence with our donors and subscribers, and they didn't need as much help, and we felt like we'd all learn together.
Great, thank you. The technology piece has been a real learning curve for everybody. We had a really good question, and Ray, you've touched on it a bit, but how did you, we had a question about the intersection of COVID and ongoing systematic racism. How did that inform your programming mission, and how did you consider that when you were to remain relevant to your communities or integrate that in your relevance efforts?
Well, that's a great question. And this is my 4th season as the music director of Fresno Philharmonic. And, you know, it's taken me this long to really get to know the community. And I felt like I had a duty to this community. And, you know, like Stephen was saying, it's a lot of immigrants, a lot of, it's a population that needs our support. And so I felt like in our programming, just in our regular seasons, I was doing a lot of new music, but I was also including a lot of diversity of composers from different backgrounds and different nationalities. And so I felt like I needed to do that moving forward in this digital version. And Stephen, you can jump in anytime, but I felt really passionate about it, and I felt like I was really starting to communicate with the community that way, and so I wanted to move that forward.
I think that was it. That we want that a lot of things Ray had started in the first 3 seasons. We wanted to make sure that was absolutely reflected in our digital things in terms of commitment to both composer diversity and contemporary composition.
You know, the other thing for us, and one of the many silver linings in COVID, is that our music and artistic director now, his job description shifted, and he's now Nir overseeing and thinking about music education. And that is in our community, or one of the ways in which we are very relevant to our community in its diversity. And because we were able to so quickly pivot to online instruction, and then really the Herculean ways our teaching faculty helped with technology. You know, we have many stories of a teacher not hearing from a student in a while and going to their home and doing a lesson in the driveway. But I think that now, instead of, for us during COVID, music education was, I'll just say, it was no longer over here, but it's now part of how Nir is thinking about the programming. And that is going to reap many rewards that we're not even imagining yet.
I also, you're absolutely right, Kathryn. I also want to add, yes, it's not only COVID. There's so many things happened in America and worldwide that influence our decision-making and the repertoire choice. I mean, it's a really fine line with how much you want to experiment, you know, and it's of course different from a community to a community. We live in a pretty conservative community, I want to say. I have a little story that a few years ago, the New York Philharmonic was on a West Coast tour, and they played in San Francisco. And what very often comes is they play San Francisco, and then they go to Disney Hall in LA, and they normally in between stop in Santa Barbara and give concert. And I looked at the programs in San Francisco and LA. They were very different. It was much more modern, avant-garde. And then in Santa Barbara was Tchaikovsky 4 and Beethoven 4th piano concerto. So I talked to Zarin Mehta, Zubin's brother, who I knew very well. I said, like, why did you choose a different program for Santa Barbara? I said, well, we sort of know the demographic here. So it's a fine line for us as music directors to find the right balance. Absolutely, yes, diversity, equity, but also to make sure that we're not doing it in an exaggerated way that we somehow go away from our core audience. So it's a fine line, and probably one of the most difficult things of our job.
And a long-term relationship, commitment.
I think it's if for me at least, honestly, going online and streaming concerts has made things way easier because people don't know what to expect anymore. They're not sitting there waiting for an overture, a concerto, and a symphony. And the one thing I've learned is that that format is probably the greatest block to having more diversity on programs than anything else. The fact that we're only allowed to have 3 pieces on a program and anything more than 5 is a pops concert, that's a problem. And I don't know how we're going to deal with it post all this, but right now I am having a blast because I can put together 5 short pieces and a symphony, and those 5 pieces can be a kaleidoscopic look at what's going on in modern music or a bunch of composers in Mozart's era that people had not heard of. You know, there's so much we can do right now, and we have a format to present it in ways that make it more accessible. So, I mean, I'm having the time of my life, and I think the struggle is actually going to be getting back to the concert hall, bringing in those big name soloists, and still trying to find time to be creative around that.
Thank you. That's a big, that again deserves, you know, its own webinar in itself, but thank you. Maybe we've had a couple requests to see if any of you would be willing to share the safety protocols that you put together with other orchestras. And I don't want to put you on the spot, so you can answer me later, but because I know there's a lot of peculiarities and intricacies you had to work through. But if anybody has anything they would want to share, we would happily make that available. So you can tell me after the fact. And then I think that the one I want to answer to wrap up, or to ask to wrap up everything, was a great question and one that's on my mind a lot. And they said, would you keep a streaming option once we go back to normal? Would you keep it free of charge? What is your plan to encourage these new audiences, sometimes these new out-of-state audiences, at the virtual concerts to support you in person at performances in the future? So it's the big, what are you going to do when we're back to normal with all of this amazing video skill set that you've now learned? And we'll wrap up with that question, I think.
I would just say there's no doubt we don't have an easy answer to that, but we're all percolating around that topic because we don't want to lose what we've gained, but how do you integrate that going forward? I sort of semi-jokingly saying we're trying to create a new Prius business model here, you know, and Francesco and I are still having to have more and more conversations. And of course, one of the things is, I've often said, it's the data, it's not the date. And we don't have enough data with this slow vaccine rollout to even know when we can be back in the hall together. And so that's why we've pushed out probably our announcement and subscription renewals for next season, because we just want to make sure we have as much data to really legitimately say what we're going to do. But we're clearly going to take some of the valuable things we've learned and figure out a way how to integrate it.
Our other two orchestras, you guys have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I was going to say, I would find it hard to believe we're not going to keep digital in our future in some way at this point. You know, I just say because it's just been it's been such a steep learning curve, and in terms of building the capacity to be able to do this. But Alan, you know, as usual, is correct about trying to figure out how to come up with the right model going forward is always the challenge.
Likewise, right, Nir. I mean, we have to be able to broadcast in some way. We have to be able to share what we do to more than just the people in the concert hall.
Well, the good news, we have such a trust from the musicians and working together. I think everybody understands. We don't want to go to the day before COVID. We want to keep what we gain, and we find a way. We have really all the goodwill to do so.
Who is going to want to go back and after we've been seeing everyone's musicians and conductors' faces, who's going to want to go back in the hall and only see the back of your head? Me.
Well, I do think there will still be people who want that collective social experience, Kathryn.
Yes, no, but what about jumbotron, so I can watch, Francesco from the front, like the violas.
That's right. We want it all, is what we're saying. We want yes and
a signature cocktail as well.
A signature cocktail while we enjoy, of course. Well, thank you all. Jamei, again, thank you for all your behind the scenes research and collection and putting this group together. Thank you for all the attendees who sent in questions. For those of you who we didn't get to your questions, we will download those and respond to you. So please rest assured. And we will share, if anybody is willing to share their safety protocols, we will share that out as well. So thank you, panelists. Thank you, experts. Thank you, brave pioneers, for everything you have done and all your inspiration. And we can't wait to see the rest of your seasons. And just thank you for all your expertise and willingness to share and be so open about your process. And let's talk again in 6 months and see how things have gone. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for attending, everyone.